Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
We've all been watching what's unfolding in Bangladesh. Dhaka, that's where most of the pictures are coming from because Sheikh Hasina's home has been ransacked. Her father's native home, 32 Dhanmandi, the most famous address of Dhaka, which was also a kind of memorial for Bangladeshi nationalism because he was the founder of the nation, Bangabandhu as he was called. That was the house in which he was assassinated. It was also a museum, had bullet marks, etc. That's also been burned. We've seen all those pictures. It's a fast-moving story. Sheikh Hasina has landed in India at Hindon Air Base, not far from Delhi, across the river from where we are, across the Yamuna. National Security Advisor, Foreign Secretary, other key people have met her, and she's drawing up her future plans, travel plans, her career plans, as I'm sure are the Indian officials. Indian Cabinet Committee on Security, the Prime Minister is presiding over that meeting because this event has a very wide, deep, and probably long-lasting set of implications for Indian interests. That said, this is a complex story, and we can talk about it for an hour, 2 hours. You know, I like the sound of my voice, so I can go on and on talking. But let me try and find a way of addressing it in a way so we can keep it cohesive and we don't take so much more of your time. So one way is to look at it from the point of view of from the vantage point of the key person in this situation right now. And that key person is the Chief of Bangladeshi Army Staff, that is General Waqaruzzaman. He spells it as Waker, Waqaruzzaman, who's just become the army chief about 6 weeks back, right? 23rd of June of this year, he was appointed the army chief. So he is walked straight into a hailstorm, or what in Hindi we might call sir mudate yole pade, right? So he's not even got his feet wet that he has to face this storm. But he is the one right now who has taken over, and he's promising to restore an elected government. He's promising to restore an elected government. He's saying, he's made it quite clear, at least in his speech, and also at his press conference today, a speech that he delivered a couple of days back, that the army has no intention of ruling the country. However, nobody immediately buys it, whether it's Pakistan or in Bangladesh, given the history. And second, given the way things are in Bangladesh, frankly, a lot of people might wish that at least for now, the army does take over. That comes from having a muddled history of the evolution of your institutions and your democracy as well. That's when you begin to see flaws in democracy much more than you get the time to enjoy the fruit of democracy. That's a little bit of opinion, but in this episode, you will see a little bit of opinion coming in and going out. Also, after I've spoken with you for a few minutes, I will have Deep Halder, who's one of India's best known experts on Bangladesh, because unlike the other Gyanis who sit here or who sit in a library or who say, because I've been there 10 years back, I know the place, or I was a diplomat, etc. Unlike them, he's a journalist, he's a young journalist, much younger than me, that helps. And he travels to Bangladesh often. In fact, he's one of the few Indian journalists who've kept track of the Bangladesh story, not just politically, but also economically, socially, and you've been seeing his writings and videos on the print. So he will join me. He will join in with me after I've given you some idea of where you might go from here, right? What does Bangladesh's record tell us? Why did Bangladesh come to this pass? Why did Sheikh Hasina lose her popularity like that? Implications for India. Because Bangladesh is a very new nation. This nation came into being just over 50 years ago, and all of us know the history of how this came into being. It has had direct army rule twice, that is General Ziaur Rahman and General H.M. Ershad. We are not going into that history, but the fact is, just to tell you briefly, that in 1975, by the end of 1975, August 15, 1975 was the assassination of Sheikh Mujib. There was some little bit of commotion after that. Some people took over. There was a brigadier who took over for some time because the brigadier wasn't happy. Khalid Musharraf. He wasn't happy that his assassination had been carried out. He took over just for 4 days. His intention was to not to stay on in power. His intention was to then bring in an elected government or a political government. But he could not keep that promise if he had made that promise to himself, because within 4 days he was also assassinated. At the end of this cycle, General Ziaur Rahman took over as Bangladesh's dictator. Within 3 years, General Ziaul Haq took over as Pakistan's dictator. So India was left in a situation by 1978 when India had a General Zia on each flank. So there was a General Ziaul Haq to India's west and General Ziaur Rahman to India's east. Then came General Ershad, and then came many other phases of instability. That's why I said the key man in today's situation is the General Wakaruzaman. If he wants to keep power, maybe he can keep power for some time. And that is something one of his predecessors had tried at one point. I will come to that because this is really the nub of the story right now. The fact, however, is that since 1997, it's a long time, since 1997, that is for 27 years, all Bangladesh army chiefs have completed their tenure, retired and gone home. All except one, I will explain that to you, all except one have retired and gone home to play golf or whatever. That is something we say about Pakistan, but that when 3 army chiefs retire and go home, retire on due date, that's very important. They keep on getting extensions. Retire on due date and go home to play golf or whatever, or maybe to do some tablighi evangelical work, then you think the institutional strength of an elected government in Pakistan is established. Bangladesh has answered that question. Since 1997, except one army chief, all others have completed their tenure and gone home. That's why since 1997, in 27 years, General Wakaruzaman is Bangladesh's 10th army chief. Now, I told you, in these 27 years, all Bangladeshi army chiefs have retired and gone home on the due day except one. And that is what is raising a question about what might happen now, because this is a very uncertain situation. The mobs haven't gone back as yet. The army chief has said he's told his army not to fire at anybody. He's also instructed the police not to fire at anybody. He's basically requesting them to go home and to say that, now in any case, Sheikh Hasina is now gone, to say that I will restore order and I will restore power to a legitimate government. In the Bangladeshi constitutional system, there was a provision for a caretaker government. In fact, a caretaker government was supposed to take over for 3 months, only for 3 months, to conduct elections. That's when one government completed its term, an election had to be conducted. As it's done in Pakistan, it was done by a caretaker government. More mature democracies don't need that anticipatory bail of having a caretaker government, just in case the guy who's in power either rigs elections or doesn't accept the election result. That's why in India, the government just becomes a caretaker government. The regular government becomes a caretaker because the model code of conduct comes in, right? But Pakistan, as in Pakistan, so in Bangladesh, that provision was there. However, important thing is that Sheikh Hasina, through a constitutional amendment, took out that provision. And that's why elections that she has held, these have been held under the watch of her own government. However, because a practice and tradition and an earlier constitution provision is available, the army chief could hand over to an interim government for 3 months to say that, look, you have power for 3 months, or such as this power is, I will help you restore order. Meanwhile, you plan the next election and you hold the next election. The reason I mentioned that one exception to you is that that is the one time such a situation arose. Bangladesh had a political crisis in 2006. That's when Khalida Zia, not Sheikh Hasina, but her rival Khalida Zia, the widow of Ziaur Rahman. The tragedy of Bangladesh politics is also the tragedy of its two preeminent families, because two of its rulers were assassinated. That is Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and Ziaur Rahman. The daughter of one, in fact, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's case is the attempt was to wipe out his entire family, including cousins, siblings, nephews, nieces, sons. His three sons were assassinated. The two daughters survived because they were not in Bangladesh. They were in Germany. Sheikh Hasina was among them. Sheikh Hasina as the daughter of a slain father, and Khalida Zia as the widow of a slain husband. They've run the country's politics since then. Initially, there was a point when they even got together to protect the democracy, and I will come to that, but usually they were at odds with each other. And Khalida Zia's party has become closer, say, with the Islamists and the Jamaat-e-Islami, whereas Sheikh Hasina's party, the Awami League, they have treated the Jamaat as a national, ethnic and political enemy, and also as purely a party of traitors and anti-national elements. That said, the choice is before General Waqaruzaman, the general who was heading the army in 2006, when Khalida Zia's term ended and a caretaker government took over in October 2006. That general was Moinuddin Ahmad. Moinuddin Ahmad, until then, the Chief of Army Staff of Bangladesh, was a Lieutenant General, was a 3-star. But what's the problem? Now an elected government was gone, a caretaker government was there, there was a political crisis in the country, political parties were fighting each other, and the kind of situation that exists today, there was a lot of anger on the street. So General Moinuddin Ahmad thought there was an opportunity for him. So one, he let the caretaker government carry on for longer. That was unconstitutional, but he let the caretaker government carry on for longer. It also helped him, or he helped himself, one, by giving himself 1 extra year in service. Right? He would have retired otherwise in 2008. He had just been appointed in 2003. He had just been appointed in 2005 for a 3-year term, but he gave himself an extra year. And you know what? Just like Idi Amin used to do to himself, constantly keep promoting himself, maybe from a corporal to field marshal, he also promoted himself to a general. Since then, Chief of Army Staff in Bangladesh has been a general. What happened in his case was, while he let caretaker governments continue, he ruled indirectly. He pulled the strings from behind the scenes and had 2 presidents work for him. So first president obviously was a regular caretaker government which had been brought in for 3 months. That was President Ijazuddin Ahmad, who served 74 days. And then was followed by President Fakhruddin Ahmad, who served for 1 year and 360 days. By this time, he tried his best to get both Hasina and Khalida Zia disqualified from contesting in Bangladesh. That's the kind of game that Pakistani army has often played, by getting all the key players in politics out of the picture, by getting them disqualified. And in these cases, judiciary in these countries usually goes along with whoever the boss is. The boss usually is the uniformed one. So this was a situation where he had also tried to exile both the political leaders, that they sort of combined together. Let an election be held. In that 2009 election, Sheikh Hasina came to power, and she's been in power since then. So her election now, such as this election was, I'll talk about that, her election now would have given her a 4th consecutive term. She's had a term earlier between 1996 and 2001 also. Then it looked like it was becoming normal politics. So Sheikh Hasina gets 1 term, Khalida gets another term, Then Sheikh Hasina gets another term. And then Sheikh Hasina decided to change the rules. And among the rules she changed, one was to take out the caretaker government rule for holding elections, so she could hold elections. And under her, elections started losing credibility from one to the other. The latest election on January 7th this year was if every election, every successive election was becoming more of a sham. This was the biggest sham of all so far. It had no credibility at all because she had disqualified Jamaat-e-Islami. All right, nobody sheds a tear for Jamaat-e-Islami, but also Khalida Zia's party, BNP, had refused to participate in the election because all its workers, all its leaders were facing so many cases. In fact, if I look at the data from international human rights organizations, and these are fairly well-researched human rights organizations, you may or may not like their politics, they count that more than 4 million cases had been filed against workers and leaders of BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, that is Khalida Zia's party. There was such a mania about filing these cases that even the 2006 Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, who's respected all over the world, is now 84 years old. Please check out his interview with us today with Maushmi Dasgupta. I will share the links with you. Even he had 171 cases filed against him. And 170 global intellectuals, including I think 60, 70 Nobel laureates, wrote a joint letter saying that his victimization should stop. He, by the way, was in Paris at the Olympics and is coming back tonight to Bangladesh. We have also published an article by N.R. Narayan Murthy, which he had written some time back, talking about the kind of person Muhammad Yunus is. So the first question now is, will General Wakaruzaman keep his promise, and that is set up a caretaker government for now or an interim government for now and quickly hold elections, because that is the only way of diffusing the situation. Otherwise, the mobs are not going home because they are also heavily Islamized. Besides the fact that they are angry with Sheikh Hasina, they've also been radicalized, and radical elements have now gotten. And in fact, there will be elements there who might think that holding an election and having a popular government probably is not such a good idea. You have already an army model available. You also have a Pakistani hybrid model available. That hybrid model was also tried in Bangladesh between 2006 and 2009. So why not now? And also political religion is always available. In this mess, will he now keep his promise, or will he then take a leaf out of the book of General Moinuddin Ahmad and go ahead with that? Having said that, General Moinuddin Ahmad had not particularly covered himself with glory. He's not remembered well in Bangladesh. In fact, if you've read the multiple volume autobiography memoir of Pranab Mukherjee, he talks about how Moinuddin Ahmad actually requested him to speak with Sheikh Hasina to let him continue as the army chief and not fire him when he won power. So hopefully the current general will not take that inspiration. That said, I will briefly tell you why things went so wrong for Sheikh Hasina. Number one, she stole the Giant 7 election. Not even her best supporters could have said that there was any credibility to that election. I told you, she banned one party, the biggest party. This is like a boxing match in which only one side is playing and the referee is yours too. So the referee says, bout ho gayi, you won. So it was a bit like that. Her party won 222 seats out of 400 that went to the polls. Now 222, all right, people get 2/3 majority. But who got the rest of the seats? 11 seats went to Jatiya Party, which is a regular party. 62 seats went to independents. And it's widely believed in Bangladesh that many of these independents actually had the same symbol, an eagle. So they were proxies for her. So even if they won as independents, they were like her loyal opposition. So she had swept the entire election, or she had grabbed the entire election. Now, people had been denied a fair election twice earlier. If you watch that interview that Muhammad Yunus has given to Maushmi Dasgupta, he says that. He says young people are angry not even because of inflation, joblessness, all that is there. Those problems are there. But biggest problem is they've not had the freedom to vote. They haven't been allowed to vote. So people who were born 15 years back, 20 years back, they've never voted in a fair election even once. And that is what they are complaining about. So that is the biggest thing that went wrong. And then she did another bunch of things wrong. One, she tried to convert Bangladesh into a party state. We've seen a little bit of that, say, in West Bengal at a much smaller scale, say when the left was in power, which means if you're a party member, you get all the spoils. If you're not in the party, you are an outsider and you can be easily victimized. That is one. Second, as always happens in these systems, huge corruption syndicates came up. In fact, there was syndicate Raj. Third, there were police excesses. We've spoken about this in the past. There is also the Rapid Action Battalion, which were notorious for carrying out excesses. She built an incredible personality cult, not around herself, but around her father. Now, much as her father is revered, and people are grateful, a lot of people are grateful that he created Bangladesh, he gave birth to Bangladesh, but that was 50 plus years ago. Bangladesh is a very young population. So many of those people don't necessarily let their emotions be governed purely by nostalgia or gratitude. And then she was seen as being too pro-India and in the process also too pro-Hindu. There were extremist Islamist groups rising in Bangladesh. She tried to control them, fight them, but she also played along with them. So, Hifazat-e-Islami, the group that we spoke about in an earlier episode of Cut the Clutter, she had also been hand in glove with them because she thought what better way to fight poison but by using poison, right? So these things, these tactics have a use by date. That use by date was now over, and that's how this came to this kind of an end. In fact, as I speak with you, her son has already said that she has no intention of coming back. She's 76 in any case, but I suspect the reason he said this or he's been asked to say this is to assuage the crowds in the street, which I am sure are already furious that she was allowed to leave. I think on that note, I will stop and I will have Deep join in now. Deep, you've been watching Bangladesh very closely. When did it become evident to you that Sheikh Hasina cannot continue like this?
Only in the last few days, Shekhar, because I think the protests were not stopping. And like it happens in most big cities, there are journalists who are known to be close to the ruling dispensation, and there are journalists who are known to oppose the dispensation. Now, even journalists who are known to be close to the dispensation, who regularly get interviews of top ministers in the Hasina government, they started telling me that it's looking very bad for Hasina. And perhaps the situation cannot be reversed from here. But there was this sense that maybe, through India's help or otherwise, Hasina would be able to, somehow manage to stay on in power. However, they were saying that the protests won't stop. Even if the current protests stop, there will be more such protests.
Because protests have gone on since Jan 7. There was
Exactly.
first the Boycott India movement,
The Boycott India
then the
movement.
so-called anti-reservation movement that we featured on Cut the Clutter
Right.
just a while back,
Yes.
and now this.
Yes. So the Boycott India protest started almost immediately after the June 7 elections when she came back to power. There was this widespread anger against Hasina, which was seen on social media. Social media influencers, one of them is a very known influencer named Pinaki Bhattacharya, who had been speaking out against Hasina, against Mr. Modi, saying that Hasina is, Modi's dictator in Bangladesh, and India is ruling Bangladesh through Hasina.
And he was able to get away with this. He was able
to get away with this in Bangladesh because he was not in Bangladesh. He was saying all this. He was saying all this from Paris.
I see.
But he is an immensely popular YouTuber. He's also on Twitter. He has been tweeting about the protest, sharing videos. In fact, he attacked one of our reports, which said that the Boycott India protests are a little meaningless because there is huge demand for Indian products in Bangladesh. The protest did not just stop at asking for a boycott of Indian products, it also warned Bangladeshi actors and actresses who come to work in Bengal, the Bengali film industry in West Bengal and the film industry, Hindi film industry, to stop work in India. So that protest somehow ended, and then this protest began. So this is not a new issue, like you said. The quota protests, and it's not even Hasina. The anger should have been directed against the court, but and Hasina had called the students for talks.
That's about the court order on reservations
On reservations,
for
yes.
the family members and descendants to freedom fighters,
Yes.
freedom fighters of 71.
Yes, children, grandchildren.
Yes.
And it was a just anger, I would say, that why should quota extend to the grandchildren of 1971 freedom fighters. However, Hasina called protesters
Razakars.
Hasina called the student protesters for talks, but she made one critical error in a presser. She said that who should be the beneficiary of quotas, if not the 1971 children of 1970, grandchildren of 1971 war heroes, should Razakars and their children be?
Razakars were the collaborators.
Yes,
and
Razakars
traitors.
were the collaborators with Pakistani army against the war of independence in East Pakistan.
And that lit a fire.
That lit a fire because the protesters somehow started owning up to the Razakar name. And they said that, yes, they proudly started saying in jest that I am, and just and in anger also, that we are Razakars, but what are you?
Because the dictator calls us Razakar.
The dictator calls
that was
us.
the
Yes,
slogan.
you're
Tell us what the slogan was
Shoirachar,
in-
yes. Ami ke Razakar, tumi ke Shoirachar. As in, who am I? I'm a Razakar. Who are you? You are a dictator.
Right.
So they started mocking her. But what happened during this period when internet was shut off was huge police brutality. Now, Bangladesh for the past couple of weeks, Shekhar has been living in a post-truth world, because on one hand, one set of journalists and social media posts will tell you that there was police brutality on student protesters. There would be a bunch of people who will tell you that it is Chhatra League, which is the ruling Awami League student wing, who were attacking protesters. Other set of people will tell you that it was Jamaat men, who tried to discredit the government and the police and the army and were attacking protesters. So you really did not know who to believe.
But as happens in these cases often, it could be all of the three.
It could be all of the three, but having said that, there was police excess. There was police excess. Children died, and I think she made a major mistake. So when the protest did not stop, in fact, there's a video I saw. There's a reel, in fact, I saw yesterday, where a gentleman is addressing a crowd and he pulls his son and says, "This is my son. You shoot him." Okay, and he tells the army men standing in front of him that you shoot him. I am sacrificing my son for the country. So when that happens, you realize that it's the end game for Hasina.
Things have gone wrong.
Yes.
What does it mean for India?
I don't know what game India has left in Bangladesh right now, because it was all about Hasina. Beyond the cooperation, beyond the strategic partnership, power, energy sector cooperations, infrastructure projects, Hasina had kept terror at bay for India.
Yes.
You remember the 2016 Holy Artisan attack. It was an attack that shook Bangladesh because it was Bangladesh's very own. The attack
was a bakery attack.
The Holy Artisan bakery attack. Yeah. Yes, the attackers were middle-class children who had gone to good schools, who were attacking their own inside that Holy Artisan bakery, saying you are un-Islamic. This way of life is un-Islamic. In fact, Indian film was made in 2021 called Faraz, which was banned in Bangladesh. It was on the Holy Artisan attack. It was shown on Netflix. Then there was the 2021 anti-Hindu violence during Durga Puja across Bangladesh over a piece of fake news. So there was...
And then there was also protests and violence during Prime Minister Modi's visit.
During Prime Minister Modi's visit in 2021, where Hasina's police shot down hardline elements and so that the visit could go on unhindered. So Hasina kept terror at bay. I had the opportunity to meet Hasina's Home Minister Asadat Zaman Khan, And he told me in all the 3 interviews that I did with him that no matter what, the Awami League government won't let terror succeed. Now with Hasina gone, all bets are off. I don't know what would India's play be uh, with a government that is yet to be formed, but which is backed by the military.
Because on the street, anti-Indianism is very strong.
On the street, anti-Indianism is very high, and this I have been reporting consistently. Even when Hasina was in power in the last 2-3 years, I have seen in civil society anti-India sentiment. Now, it's not necessarily anti-Hindu sentiment, but there is an anti-India. There's an interesting thing you mentioned about the 1971 generation. Now, that was 50 plus years ago. So the
Right.
current generation do not really identify with memories of 1971. The current generation that has come of voting age sees Hasina as a dictator. They have not seen anybody except Hasina. So whatever goes wrong in Bangladesh, they blame it on Hasina. So you can't really sell Mukti Juddha and India's role in Mukti Juddha and the sacrifices Hasina's family made to the current generation. Anti-incumbency was huge, and so was anger against India because Hasina was seen as India's ally.
You said that this is more anti-Indianism than anti-Hindu sentiment, but
Yes.
there is an anti-Hindu sentiment
There is
because she's
yes.
been called a Modi stooge.
Modi stooge, she has been called names, and she has been a popular slogan before the elections. And even a year before the elections, on the streets were Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Sheikh Hasina Bapen Nam. As in Hare Krishna, Hare Ram is Sheikh Hasina's father's name.
Father's name. Plus,
Yeah.
there was also a popular rejection, on the street by those on the right.
Yes.
Islamic
Right.
right? Of Awami Leagues, there was also a popular rejection or popular mocking of the Awami League's secular slogans.
Yes.
On the street.
Yes.
And you mentioned one of those slogans to me.
Dharma jar jar utsav shobar. As in, religion is personal, but festivity belongs to everybody. And that's an idea she wanted, and her party, to a large extent, wanted to spread
That you
across.
follow your religion, but attend everybody's
Everyone's festivals. Yes.
or celebrate everybody's
Yes.
festivals.
So if you see even the current protests, there will be a lot of wall art where she's painted as Kali, where she is called names because of her proximity to Hindus. And anti-Hindu violence has already started in Bangladesh. There are unconfirmed reports of attacks on Hindu homes, temples outside Dhaka in many places across Bangladesh. I've been receiving those updates.
Yeah, so there are two more questions, but maybe today we don't have the time. Maybe we'll take these up going ahead. One,
Right.
the Americans had taken a view very early on that they wanted Hasina out.
Yes,
Right?
they
In
did.
fact, there were clear warnings that she
Yes.
should leave constitutionally or else.
Yes.
So why do you think did Americans get so hostile to her?
There's no way of saying this, but I think she figured out that there's a threat to her government, because she did mention
Yes, she did.
2 months ago about a white country
Right.
which is trying to carve out a
Wanting
Christian
to, wanting
kingdom.
to take the Christian island base, St.
Yes.
Martin's Island
Yes.
of Chittagong.
Yes, but also she said that they're trying to carve out an independent Christian country with parts of India, Myanmar, and Bangladesh.
So that's one hell of a conspiracy theory.
Yes,
but,
yes.
but she did
Yes,
say that.
but before the elections, there were reports in Bangladesh media of American diplomats talking to not just BNP, which is okay because it's an opposition party, also to Jamaat.
That's right.
Now, it raised questions: why would American diplomats talk to Jamaat, knowing Jamaat's history?
Right. And the second is, how much does it look like the Arab Spring? Once again, mobs have come. They've
Yes.
dismantled the system that was there.
Yes,
but
they're
there's
attacking
nothing to-
Mujib statues.
There,
They're
there
breaking
are
them.
nothing to replace it.
Yes,
There's nothing to replace
Nothing
it. The
to replace
only surviving institution is the army.
yes. So it looks like Arab Spring. It is Arab Spring. I mean, unbelievable images of Gono Bhavan, her official residence, being raided.
Yeah.
And not just that, I think there are reports of people hunting down people who are supporters of the government. There have been attacks during these protests on workers and leaders of Awami League. Policemen were burnt alive.
Because Arab League had one of two consequences. Either it left a failed state,
Yeah.
a broken and failed state,
Right.
or the state went back to its dictatorships.
Yeah.
So Egypt went back to the usual military dictatorship under American patronage, and Syria, after all this stuff that's happened, some is still happening there. Bashar al-Assad is back, but this one under Russian patronage. So what
Right.
do you see happening here? Read the crystal ball.
I would like to think there will be some semblance of sanity in the days ahead. It is very heartening to see that some of the social media influencers are already telling people that don't make it about religion, don't attack minorities. This is not what the revolution was for. But since we are talking conspiracy theory, knowing if it's true that America had an axe to grind, has an axe to grind in Bangladesh, and somehow they were the third tier of the protest. The first being the students, of course. The second is the Jamaat and BNP, and the third tier being the long hand of America. Then I think instability will go on for a while in Bangladesh before things settle this way or that.
Well, we know that with Arab Spring, the only force that immediately emerged to have popular support was Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes.
And that nobody wanted that. And
Yes.
there are equivalent forces in Bangladesh as well. That's the reason we think that this story will go on for some time. So please keep watching. I think we'll come back with this theme with you more than once in the next few days, next several days. Meanwhile, I'm also giving you the links of some of the stories that Deep has done for us, and also four episodes of Katta Clutter that we have featured, where we have featured Bangladesh in the past. That is 442, 714, 1341, and one just the other day, 1485. So we will share all those links with you.